Hello everyone. Today we are going to present a comprehensive statistical analysis regarding the non-food commodity price index. Before we deep dive into the data, let me introduce our group members. We have 7 people in this group, and each member will be presenting their respective analytical parts linearly throughout this video. To give you a brief background, the Consumer Price Index or CPI is a vital economic indicator used to measure the average change over time in the prices paid by consumers. While Group 1 focuses on food items, our group analyzes the non-food sector, which highly reflects the core living expenses and the real purchasing power of households. Based on the official publication from BPS Banten Province, Banten registered a year-on-year general inflation rate of 2.74% by December 2025. This macro movement is heavily driven by price fluctuation across 10 main non-food expenditure groups. As the foundation of our statistical project, we have gathered the Munte CPI dataset from 10 non-food categories in Banten throughout 2025. This includes clothing, housing, health, transportation, education, up to personal care. By comparing the base data from January to December, our team can properly calculate the required price index. This raw dataset will be calculated and cross-examined using 4 major index formulas, which are the simple price index, simple aggregate, and the weighted index using Laspeyres and Paasche methods. To see how the mathematical formulation works and the result of our simple index calculation, the next part will be presented by Lisa, Nirmala, Aisha. So Lisa, the show is yours.
Following up on the introduction, I will be walking you through the unweighted index, specifically the simple relative price index and the simple aggregate price index. Let's start with the simple relative price index. This method is actually quite straightforward. We simply calculate the percentage of price change for each of the 10 non-food commodities individually, using 2018 as our base year and 2022 as our current year. If we look at the data on the screen, you'll notice that every single item experienced a price increase. However, the most significant jump was seen in the building material, specifically bricks or batu bata, which hit an index of 188.76. This means the price skyrocketed by almost 88.76% over just 4 years. On the other hand, bambu tua or old bamboo had the smallest relative increase among the group, with an index of 112.25, meaning it only saw a 12.25% price rise. Now what happens if we look at them as a whole group? That's where the simple aggregate price index comes in. Instead of looking at the item one by one, we sum up the price of all 10 commodities in 2022, which gives us a total of 3,746,223 rupiah. Then, we divided it by the total sum of our base year in 2018, which was 2,957,239 rupiah. After multiplying the result by 100, we get an aggregate index of 126.68. In simple economic terms, without considering how much each item people actually buy, the general price level for this specific basket of non-food goods went up by roughly 26.68% from 2018 to 2022. But as we know in reality, a household doesn't buy a television as often as they buy singlet, right? To see how these numbers shift when we account for the actual quantities consumed, my friend will explain the weighted index using Laspeyres and Paasche methods.
Hello everyone. Have you ever wondered how we actually measure the average price change for non-food items, like clothing, construction material, and electronics over time? To find out, I applied the Paasche price index. This method is unique because it uses the current year quantities. In this case, 2022 as the weighting factor. The underlying price data is sourced from the official Banten Central Bureau of Statistics. By calculating the aggregate total for all 10 non-food commodities, we divide the 2022 expenditures by the 2018 base year value. This gives us a final index score of 113.04. What does this mean economically? It is so that this group of non-food commodities experienced an average price increase or structural inflation of 13.04% over a 4-year period. Well, this is a brief explanation from me, and thank you for watching.
Now I'm gonna explain and calculate Laspeyres index. Laspeyres index, proposed by German economist Etienne Laspeyres, for measuring current price or quantity in relation to those of selected base period. A Laspeyres price index is computed by taking the ratio of the total cost of purchasing a specified group of commodities at current price, in this case non-food commodities, to the cost of that same group at base period price and multiplying by 100. So now we calculate the Laspeyres index for non-food commodity by determining price now or PT is from year 2022 and price by year is from 2018. The commodity is shirts, sarung, brick, wood, old bamboo, television, lubrication oil, bicycle, cement, and nails. The source of data is Jurnal from BPS, Harga Konsumen per Desa Non-Pangan 2022, and Diagram Timbang Indeks Harga Konsumen 2018. So, this is the result from all 10 commodities, and we can set example from search. The price of search from 2022 is 22,991, and the quantity from base year is 60,510, and the P price from base year and times quantity from base year is from harga dasar from data diagram timbang is 1,735,000,000, and we can times it by 100, so the result is 115.05. So they have increased the price to 15%.
Okay, after Mario provide the data of commodities and inflation rates from non-food rural consumer, I'm gonna analyze the data of commodities and inflation rates from non-food rural consumer. So, the first is t-shirts. T-shirts have a price increase of 15%, which means they have a low and stable inflation rate. Second is the sarong. The sarong has a price increase of 22.98%, which means that the sarong has a moderate and unstable inflation rate. Third is bricks. Bricks have a price increase of 3.35%, which means bricks have a very low and stagnant inflation rate. Fourth is logwood. Logwood has a price decrease of 3.54%, which means that logwood doesn't experience inflation or price increases. Fifth is old bamboo. Old bamboo has a price increase of 7.77%, which means it has a low and stable inflation rate. Sixth is television. Television has a price increase of 10.82%, which means all televisions have a low and stable inflation rate. Seventh is oil. Oil has a price increases of 12.39%, which means it has low and stable inflation rate. Eighth is bicycles. Bicycles have a price increase of 40.32%, which means bicycles have a high inflation rate and are less stable. Ninth is cement. Cement has a price increase of 2.77%, which means that the cement has a very low and stable inflation rate. And the last is spikes. Spikes have a price increase of 18.27%, which means they have a moderate and stable inflation rate. Okay, after I analyze the data, the next is Kai going to explain the interpretation of indexes.
Hello everyone, I'm Kai. Here I will explain about the interpretation of index. So, without further ado, let's go. First, simple aggregate index. The result of simple aggregate index from non-food commodities in the previous page is 126.28. This means that the aggregate group of price had increased 26.28% in the 5-year period, which is from 2018 to 2022. From the result, we can assume or predict that household purchasing power for the non-food commodities may decrease because buying the same goods now costs 26.28% more, and the producer may face rising input costs, which could push up the selling prices. Also, we can take note that the effect of television on the total index for both the current year and the base year is television is a significant contributor to the total index, so the current price of television will drive the index much more than any other item in the simple aggregate index. And the second is the Paasche price index. The result from the unweighted index from the Paasche price index from non-food commodities, which my friend explained yearly, is 113.04. This result is indicate that there has been an increase of 13.04% in the price of this market of non-food commodities between 2018 and 2022. Result, we can assume that there is an inflation from 2018 to 2022 by 13.04%. This means it costs 13.04% more to purchase this item in the 2022 than it didn't in 2018. And the last is the Laspeyres price index. The result from the weighted index, Syaefullah price index from non-food commodities based on the analysis in the previous page. In this method, the weight of each item is considered. In the previous, in the simple aggregate index, the most weight is television, but in the Syaefullah index, the item with the most weight is sepeda or bicycle because the product and the unit of sepeda or bicycle sold is the largest.
Conclusion. The first is main findings based on the Paasche price index calculation for 10 non-food commodities in Banten province, BPS 2018 until 2022. The index value was 113.04, representing a weighted average price increase of 13.04% over the 4 years of observation. The second, segment analysis. The highest price increases were recorded in the building material segments, particularly bricks 88.9% and timber beams 60.9%, which are believed to be influenced by the surge in raw material costs and post-pandemic supply chain disruptions. Meanwhile, clothing, t-shirts round about 18.2%, cotton sarongs 16.3%, and automotive oil 12.6% recorded more moderate and relatively stable increases. Third, methodological notes. The Paasche method used current year quantity weights Q 2022. So, the results reflect actual consumer consumption patterns. However, it should be noted that this method tends to produce lower values than the Laspeyres method. due to substitution bias. So, the 13.04% figure can be considered the lower limit of the true inflation estimate. Fourth, economic implications. The 13.04% increase over 4 years equates to an average of more or less than 3.1% per year, which warrants caution because the greatest pressure comes from building materials as a commodity that directly impacts the cost of living and purchasing power of low-income communities. Closing. Conclusion: this analysis demonstrates the existence of the significant inflationary pressures in non-food community groups in Banten province during the 2018 until 2022, with building materials as the primary driver. For more comprehensive results, it is recommended that this analysis be supplemented with the Laspeyres index and Fisher index for comparison. The results of this study are expected to serve as a reference for price control policies and inflation management strategies at the regional level.